This episode is brought to you by Classical Conversations. To find out more, please visit classicalconversations.com.
Epstein and Hunger Games 2020. Epstein!
It's going to be a long show.
Oh, Supreme Court flip-flops.
There always be flip-flopping.
Supreme Court. And I don't know about this whole voucher thing. Nuh-uh. Pastor Stephen Warhurst. He's ready for a battle.
He's on the PCA war path.
We got him coming on the show. This next segment. Hey, y'all. Welcome to Cross Politic on the Fight Laugh Feast Network. I can't do that right there.
Oh, you want me to stop this for you?
Yep. The fastest growing unwoke, multiracial, theocratic, cisgender, patriarchal, post-mill, political podcast in the nation.
Hey,
in the world.
in the universe.
Hey guys, it's good to be with you.
It's terrible.
Make sure you guys join the club. We got this limited edition pint coming out.
Speaking of which, mine is empty.
You
got any?
Mine's not.
You got anything?
Let me help you with that. Here you go. Here's some Macallan Scotch for you.
Where's that organ now?
I'm drinking wine before Jesus got to it.
Hey, and the reason why you guys want to support us is for one because
Do we need that much?
What's this? Is this Christian?
That might.
Yeah, dude, that's post-mill. That's what that is.
It's a gigantic bottle.
That's gonna be around for a while. 12 Macallan 12. It's good.
1.75 liters.
Yeah.
Oh my gracious.
That's a little excessive, Gabe.
It is.
That's a little excessive, bro.
I'm
Presbyterian.
I feel sort of awkward about this.
You know.
When you guys support the show, you guys help us create our own platform. As big tech platforms conservatives, you guys saw the White House meeting this last week, and he brought in all the kind of, I don't know,
conservatives,
the people who are responding to big tech platforms.
Okay.
You know, anyways, because we need to build our own platform. You guys help us provide us with resources to produce more shows and content. You help us expand our network.
And you can feed small Shannon children.
That's exactly right.
You can.
That's right.
Yes, you can.
None of us are on staff, and we're slowly trying to get us on staff.
I'm officially on staff.
Well, you're officially on staff now.
Coming on.
Half kind of part-time.
Halfway.
You're feeding half a Shannon
We
child
are
right
so
now.
Only 3 of them.
close to actually having a full-time staff here on Cross Politic, and if you guys can imagine what we could do with a full-time staff, it'd be incredible.
And you get one of these cool pint glasses and a bunch of other cool stuff.
Yeah.
And if you're already a member and you want to get one of these, just upgrade. This show is also brought to you by Classical Conversations. Classical Conversations believes that parents are the best teachers for their children. It's almost like they read the Bible or something.
Imagine that.
Classical Conversations is committed to helping families homeschool successfully all the way through high school. The program offers community, in-person and online, encouragement, fellowship, accountability, support from like-minded parents, rich downloadable resources, online forums, video tutorials. My gracious, it just keeps going. Tried and trusted learning framework with recommended assignments, trained parent tutors that model the classical approach. I mean, the thing is, you know that we've been saying, get your kids out of the public schools.
That's right.
Yep.
Get them out. We need a mass Christian jailbreak.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we know that one of the great hindrances is a lot of families are saying, but I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
Right.
And we've said, first of all, you need to just trust God and say, well, all right, Lord, you call me to teach my children, to raise them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, so I'm going to do this. Yeah. But secondly, you need to know that there are a bunch of Christian communities out there that are already working at this. Classical Conversations is one of them. Share the love of learning through a Christian worldview, fellowship with other families. Classical Conversations families thrive using 3 keys to a great education: classical, Christian, community.
Amen.
That's really good. And they were our first corporate sponsor ever.
So support the people who support us.
Cheers, Classical
sure.
Conversations. We appreciate you.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Epstein. I said it right. Epstein.
Yeah.
It's possible he might take down the Democratic Party here.
Jeffrey Epstein.
The U.S. attorney in New York saying from 2002 to 2005, Epstein ran a sex trafficking enterprise, luring dozens of girls, some as young as 14, to his New York City and Palm Beach, Florida homes. He would pay them hundreds of dollars to give him massages, and then the physical contact would escalate into sex acts, according to the 14-page indictment. Epstein would allegedly pay even more money for the girls to recruit other possible victims.
This allowed Epstein to create an ever-expanding web of new victims. As alleged, Epstein was well aware that many of his victims were minors.
back in the mid-2000s,
Yeah.
there was a 53-page indictment that was drafted, interestingly, never filed.
Okay.
I don't know, against this American financier, Jeffrey Epstein. So at the time, police in Palm Beach, Florida, identified more than a dozen girls, the reporter just said, who alleged sexual contact with him. One of the girls told police that she was paid to bring other girls to Epstein's mansion, and that's when the sexual immorality began.
Yeah.
So she's a recruiter.
Yes.
Okay.
Instead of prosecuting the case, the U.S. attorney in the Southern District of Florida at the time, Alexander Acosta,
Okay.
offered a plea deal for 2 prostitution offenses, which carried a penalty of 13 months of incarceration with work release and a requirement to register as a sex offender, and Epstein and his attorneys took the deal. Fresh on the news, of course, is that Acosta is now the
Department of Labor Secretary.
Department of Labor Secretary for Trump. So he's moved positions and he is now resigned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because Epstein is back in court because they've unsealed documents. I think it must be the indictment of that sex trafficking.
They've been able to come up with new allegations because you double jeopardy. You can't be tried for what happened in the past.
Well, and the question though is, I wonder whether what was unsealed, because that's what it said. It says something that there was an indictment was unsealed, and I'm wondering if it's that 53-page indictment that was never filed.
They didn't file.
So it's not double jeopardy if it was never filed and actually worked through.
That's right.
And so now it's been unsealed, and he's pleaded not guilty, but now he's back in New York City federal court, and
why is this coming up now?
Well, it's interesting too because Acosta said that some of those things were not a part of the original case that they weren't even aware of at the time.
Right.
So
There's more new things coming out, and
out.
I think there have been even more allegations that have been surfacing in the last few days.
Right. Exactly.
As all this is going down, the thing that I just want to point out about all this though is I think it's remember that we're dealing with people who don't really know what justice is.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Okay. I mean, unless you have a standard, then you don't have justice.
Right.
What you're fumbling around for, you might know you need justice. You might, care about justice in an abstract sense. But if you don't have a standard, then you don't really know what justice is. You're fumbling around in the dark.
Especially when New York's passing born alive abortion legislation.
Seriously.
Right? Infanticide.
Seriously. Right. It's
and
like
your prosecutor's going to handle this case well?
Right. Well,
really?
And again, they like to throw around like 14-year-old girls. And if you are biblically literate and committed to the word of God, you know that power and age differentials should be taken into account.
Absolutely.
There are biblical principles to take into account.
Right.
But we are living in a society that says girls as young as 14 can get abortions without their parents' permission.
And sex changes.
And right? So
you can't tell nobody.
So Christians.
I need my McAllen over here.
So Christians. Has it come to that?
I'm gonna. I can't.
So Christians, that's really obnoxious, Gabe.
Just,
I don't know. It's so like Texas or
if you
something.
Can't see, this thing is like the size of a little baby.
It's like
it's huge.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
This is wrong.
This is ridiculous. But but that's the thing is Christians don't get sucked into the rhetoric.
Yeah.
Now, do we care about these teenage girls? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And is Epstein a creep? Most likely, sure looks like it.
Yeah. He's been a creep for a long time.
Yeah. But this is the thing is you can't make up justice as you go along.
Yeah.
I mean, you can try, but it's called tyranny. That's
right.
That's what's going on. So, I mean, Christians, think about this biblically. And I think one thing to just keep in mind, first of all, is why was there a plea deal offered?
Well, because they probably didn't have enough information to convict him on it.
I think that's very likely. Yeah. If Acosta didn't have enough, I mean, this
or it could be the victim. I mean, I don't know this, but it could be the victims like, well, how much money can we get off the plea deal? Right.
Yeah.
Like the victims could also determine if they wanted to
remember. In order to convict somebody, you have to have 2 or 3 witnesses, which means that these girls are going to have to testify. Or there's going to be and the girls might have themselves said, we'd rather do a plea bargain, get a little bit of money out of this, and not testify.
There. One of the news articles I read on this said it was possible that the girls didn't even know about the plea bargain. So
I also saw that 2 other things. One is that some of them were paid.
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
and the other thing is that that some of them didn't even know about the whole prosecution. But again, it cuts both ways, people.
Yep.
Oh, you're gonna do it, huh? He's doing it. Oh, he's
turning around.
He's not gonna do it on camera. But the thing is that it cuts both ways. Yes, if something horrible has happened, then I think we ought to try to prosecute it to the extent that we can.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But remember, in order to prosecute it, you got to put those young girls in the spotlight.
Well, yeah, that's right.
And sometimes people, for very reasonable reasons, will say, I don't want to have any, I'm moving on.
Yeah.
I want to move on. Now, and it depends on severity. It depends on the circumstance, all the stuff.
But they're not helping in that situation either, though. By the way, they're not helping wanting just to move on and not go for the.
No, I agree.
Justice.
I agree.
I mean,
I think, if this happens to a Christian family, the Christian family ought to say, we need to get this guy. We need to
say what?
We need to take care of this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Take care of this. Get rid of him.
Yeah.
But my point is just that when a plea deal is offered, typically it has to do with the fact that you don't have enough testimony or evidence to convict somebody.
Right.
And so you say, look, this is what we can agree on. He admits to a certain amount of it,
right.
A couple of prostitution offenses. That's why we do this.
Are plea deals scriptural?
It depends on the case.
Yeah, I don't know. What are you thinking about? Depends on the case.
Well, I think there's an agreement that a father and a guy who has taken his daughter to Virginia, they can come to agreement on within certain contexts. But a plea deal for murder, no.
Yeah, I think so it does depend on that. And we're thinking about like categories that this would fall into in terms of biblical justice.
Yeah.
So rape is a crime,
Right.
punishable by death in most cases, at least in some cases, depending.
Prostitution.
You have a buying and selling of human beings,
stealing humans. Yeah.
And you also have kidnapping potentially.
Right,
sex trafficking in some cases may include kidnapping.
This doesn't fit inside of that category.
And kidnapping can also be punishable by death.
Yep, absolutely.
You're stealing someone's life, and so life for life. And then the only other thing you have is stealing a woman's virginity, which is a form of seduction.
Yeah.
And so
and to clarify, stealing, it's consensual.
There's no agreement made with the father, with the woman.
The language of the Old Testament law is basically it implies that the kind of seduction didn't rise to a certain kind of violent level, like rape would, but at the same time, it's inconclusive. And they weren't married. They didn't have the father's permission.
Right.
There was probably some measure of consensualness to it.
Right.
But the father can still demand a restitution payment.
Right.
There's no commitment to her or God that this is your right. That's part of it.
But anyways, all this to say, people just remember we live in this Me Too era, which doesn't really care about women and doesn't really care about justice.
Well, no, not at all.
It's using allegations basically to give more power to the government.
Yeah.
Look, these people can't handle sexual abuse situations.
Acosta was horrible. Look what he did. He did a plea deal.
So give more power to the government.
I think that Epstein is the political Weinstein.
What do you mean?
So I think
Weinstein.
Oh, here,
yeah,
I'm doing a game. Weinstein.
Epstein. Weinstein.
Do that.
Weinstein was.
You did it.
I'm just going to do it.
Yeah,
I'm going to do it. Everybody knew what he was.
Yeah.
Everybody knew what was going on. Everybody,
for decades.
It wasn't a hidden thing. Everybody knew it's how you made it. That's just part of the way the industry ran.
Everybody has known how Epstein's been going for decades.
I think that's been the same. And now all of a sudden there's this turn up and there's this hoopla around a case that's already been settled. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because in the same way, when we saw this thing happen in Hollywood, the whole roles changed over. It was
what happened.
You started seeing Amazon going crazy. They're starting to hire women for their head now. Their whole got hit by Me Too as well. Industry started changing where the women DPs infiltrated the whole industry now.
What's DPs?
Director of photographies.
Oh,
and directors. I mean, even Avengers, they got women directors now. I mean, the whole thing, the industry flipped, and the power went from what was traditionally the men, older white guy in charge to.
Yeah.
No, it's the young.
You think that was on purpose?
Oh, absolutely.
Was that was a play?
Power move.
Where there's enough sort of just bitterness, angstiness about Weinstein, ready to see him go.
And then when he went, they knew it was a domino effect on everybody else.
And then and it's a power play
to turn the industry. Absolutely.
And for progressive women.
Absolutely.
To get power.
And Weinstein doesn't even need to be convicted. He actually probably is not going to be convicted
of
all this. He's probably going to get away with all this.
They just took him out.
The power move happened.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
That's right.
And everybody that he touched got hit.
So now you're
Epstein.
saying this is the same political thing, same thing in the political realm.
Yeah,
Epstein gets taken out, and who are the young progressive women?
AOC,
AOC,
Ilhan Omar,
Kamala.
Tlaib.
And it's who he's attached to.
Commie.
It's who he's attached to directly, though. He's attached to all the major
Bill
political
Clinton, Donald Trump,
status quo politicians.
Yep.
The ones who kind of held the line. That's who he's attached to.
But are you saying then that you think this is a power play within the Democratic Party?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Democratic, and you can see it in the argumentation that's happening between Pelosi and AOC.
Yeah.
That's not an accident.
They're having a cat fight this last week.
Oh, you should play Hunger Games.
Hunger
Games. But they're trying to take down Biden.
Yeah.
He's status quo, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because he's the old school Democrats.
It is time to walk away from the politics of the past and towards something
he's
totally
saying it.
different.
People are lining up for food.
Politics of the past.
I'm a hugger, I'm a kisser, and I'm a little bit of a sniffer.
Raising the minimum wage does not hurt business, it grows business.
So proud of you guys. I am Spartacus.
And when somebody knows where all the dead bodies are, and you can get he's guaranteed he's going to be flipping on some folks.
Oh, he's going to do another plea deal.
I read an article. So he owns an island. So he's got this jet and he's got an island down in, where is it? St. Martin or something like that?
Virgin Island.
Virgin Islands. They're not virgin anymore.
No.
But apparently somebody said that he's got a safe down there, a big safe
with all the names.
What's in there?
Yeah.
So some people were going after, people like Chuck Schumer, who's taken a bunch of, 22,000 from Epstein, donated to his election in 1992 and 1997. And one guy's like, why'd you wait till now? Why you been hanging around?
Yeah.
Because he's been playing a game. He's been willing to go along, get along.
I didn't know we were supposed to be worshiping these guys.
But this is not, right. But this is not just about money.
Right.
You read an article, Knox, where you noted how small so many of the donations were.
That tripped me out.
But everybody's playing along.
It's like $2,000, and they're
here
like, hey.
and there and here and there. But it's not about that. It's about having power to manipulate anyone who's taken a ride on the Epstein jet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anybody?
Yeah.
So Bill Clinton.
Yep.
Your name's on it.
The Clintons are out.
Your name's on the logs.
Biden's got to go.
Yeah.
This actually goes back to the 1980s and 1990s when Bernie Sanders was going hard on the Democratic Party, saying that they were a bunch of Republican lights.
Yeah, right.
He sort of reluctantly joined the Democrats over and over again, but was just basically said, you guys are a bunch of Republican lights.
Yeah.
Right.
And the Democratic Party, he said, is not reformable at the time.
Can't happen.
Right.
He said it can't be reformed. And what he mean by reformed was become fully progressive.
Right.
I think you're right, David. I think that's what's happening. I think this is, look at the Democratic debates.
Yeah, I was looking. Yeah, that's exactly
and
right.
I was going to say that looking at the Democratic debates, they actually don't disagree with each other. No. So the old Democrats and the new Democrats don't disagree with each other. And you see this even in the forced busing that Kamala Harris tried to pin Biden on.
Yeah.
That same week after that debate where she basically tried to infer that Biden was a racist because of his views on forced busing.
She said,
you're not a racist, but you are.
But you are, yeah.
But you act
she
like
said,
one.
she actually agreed later. She said that basically she articulated the same forced busing policies that Biden was for.
Yeah.
And, it's like, and so the old guard and the new guard don't disagree. They're just having a power fight and trying to overthrow one another.
And the young, I think you're right. I think it's a really good point though. The young women.
Oh, they are
progressives.
They are after it, man.
They want the power.
Yeah.
They want the power, and they're winning.
Well,
they're
did you see what Nancy Pelosi and AOC
said that she's racist.
Yeah.
Yeah,
she wasn't.
and because Nancy said she's referring to four of them. She says there's only four of them. They only have 4 votes, and that's it.
Yeah, AOC.
Who's them?
AOC,
side.
Ilhan Omar,
They only have 4.
Tlaib, and then one
I
more.
personally try not to remember their names.
There's 4 of them.
AOC was saying
there's
though
4
that,
of the new guard that are women, and Nancy was referring to them as like that's all they got. They got their 5 million Twitter followers and then 4 votes in the House.
Oh, Pelosi's dead.
Yeah,
she's dead in the
Well,
water.
they're fighting. They're going back and forth.
I was hoping
and that's why Ocasio-Cortez said she's basically discriminating against me.
Yeah,
a woman of color.
Well, that's what she said. She was the point was that I'm not saying she's a racist, but it's amazing that she always seems to go after the women of color.
Right.
Yep.
It's the same thing Kamala Harris did. I'm not saying you're a racist, but
you just are one.
You just act like a racist. Yeah. No, I think watching,
you think Pelosi's racist?
No.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised.
I do. Yeah.
Do you?
Abortion.
I mean, okay.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if she was.
Yeah.
I think all the Democrats
I think that's a really good point. I think the Democratic Party
It's
is
a
having
power change.
It's a power shift,
Yeah.
and these young. I mean, you can't say let's be progressive and then say, but let's pause here.
Yeah.
It keeps going, which is why Republicans need to stop compromising.
I mean, I couldn't even identify Bernie Sanders out of the last debates.
He's
Which one's
old.
Bernie?
He's the old guy. Yeah.
Stephen Warhurst next on Cross Politic.
Classical Conversation supports homeschooling parents by cultivating the love of learning through a Christian worldview in fellowship with other families. We provide a classical, Christ-centered curriculum, local, like-minded communities across the United States and in several countries, and we train parents who are striving to be great classical educators in the home. For more information and to get connected, please visit our website at classicalconversations.com. Classical, Christian, get connected, get community.
Hee-haw!
Never mind.
Don't do that.
Forget it. Whatever.
Hey, welcome back to Cross Politic on the Fight Laugh Feast Network. This segment is brought to you by Donuts from Rosars. Thanks. Gabe, did you bring those?
No.
Where did they come from?
Jason Farley.
Oh, Jason.
Westminster Confession of Fun.
Hey, and with us on the line, this segment is Pastor Stephen Warhurst. He's the pastor for 17 years and running at Westminster Presbyterian Church in Kingsport, Tennessee.
Man, faithfulness.
He's a graduate of RTS in Orlando. He's working on a children's book,
Oh, praise God.
Pygo the Free. It's coming.
How to baptize your babies? Is that
Probably.
what it is?
He's got 8 kids ranging from age 26 to 5. His youngest is named Knox.
How about that?
Wait, 8 kids, 26 to. You got to tell me. I've seen your image on YouTube since you're famous now. You don't look that old, man. 26-year-old. Where the Fountain of Youth at?
That's right. I'm 53.
Oh
Man.
I'm doing the math here.
yeah. I know, right? Yeah.
Pastor Steve's written several articles for the Aquila Report, particularly on Revoice.
Oh.
Okay.
And he's also newly famous for a talk he gave at the PCA General Assembly. Did you see him?
You know you got to be good when you can give a talk at like 11 o'clock at night and it blows up.
Yeah.
You got to be hot at that point.
Yeah. So, Steve, thank you so much for being on Cross Politic.
Well, thank you for having me.
So can you, a lot went down. It's been a couple of weeks. Hopefully maybe you sort of been able to kind of marinate and figure out, okay, what happened? But maybe specifically, could you just, for those maybe who aren't following really closely, what happened, what's been happening in the PCA and then what happened at General Assembly? Could you recap specifically what happened at General Assembly? Maybe just using Revoice as kind of your central point, because I know there were several different things that happened that all kind of
tell you there were
connect.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, there were 3 overtures, really 4, that came to the assembly that were dealing with Revoice issues.
Right.
I was advocating for one of those overtures, which was Overture 28, which was from our presbytery, and it was probably the highest octane of the 3 overtures or 4 overtures.
Okay.
And it was sort of pushed to the back, and they were hoping to bury it, I think, a little bit in the back. It was the very last overture addressed in the committee, and it was also the very last overture addressed on the floor of General Assembly, which means that's why I was speaking at 11:30 when everybody's tired. So that was sort of the politics of the thing. I was very last, unpopular, getting up there to speak about this thing. And then I start saying things like vile affections and words like that, which offended people. And they tried to shut me down.
Right.
With a technicality, they said it was inappropriate. My speech was inappropriate. And there was a lot of confusion about whether it was germane. I was thinking, germane to what? We are talking about this issue of homosexuality. It's quite germane to that. And then the next day, after I gave the speech, there was a formal protest against the speech, and they said that I was accusing them of being deceptive or intending to be deceptive. Now, I don't know what their hearts are, but I think they were being deceptive in the talks at Revoice.
Yeah.
So I won't back down from that, but I don't think I said anything about their intentions. They may be deceived and deceiving, but I think there were deceptive words, especially that sexual minority term is a deceptive term being used to identify homosexuality with ethnic groups or race.
Right.
When you say you think they are being deceived, who's they?
I think there's people within the Revoice movement that are being deceived.
In the PCA, within the PCA, particularly within the PCA?
Yes. I think they've bought into a lot of the homosexual propaganda, and it's corrupting the PCA. So we were trying to clarify things with this overture to make it very clear from the scriptures what's wrong with what's being taught at Revoice.
So what's the status then of that protest?
By the way, the protest passed with a majority. So a majority of the assembly there on Friday morning thought that what I said was so inappropriate that it needed to be protested. Technically, you can't protest the talk, so they protested the moderator for letting me talk.
Wow.
And that passed.
The protest passed, but the overture failed.
Yeah.
It got walloped. It was just maybe 15% of the assembly voted for it. About 200 people voted for it.
So your overture failed by 80%.
But the protest the next morning that says that you are speaking, that your speech should not have been allowed, that passed the assembly.
Right. It was a close majority. It was, I don't remember the numbers, but they had a majority.
Yeah. At what point do we escalate the situation like Jesus and start ransacking the temple?
I didn't have my whip with me.
Jesus didn't either. He made it out of stuff that they had there. So there's no excuse there, Stephen.
We were watching your speech yesterday on the floor. I was in the studio with Knox, and Knox kept on pausing it and looking at me and saying, "How is he being so calm?
Yes.
When's he going to rip off his shirt and start yelling?"
Yeah, that's exactly right. I came out of a charismatic world and got into the reform world, and then I became a PCA Presbyterian, and I was in love because all the doctrines were laid in place for me. And I couldn't imagine that 10, 12 years ago that this would even be a conversation that would be tolerated. And now I'm watching what it seems like a hostile takeover, but done very nicely. You know what I mean? And I'm watching you talk and give all these responses, and I'm like, man, this is so preschool. And he's talking to Presbyterian pastors. At what point do you lose yourself and say, okay, guys, you have lost your mind?
Well, what was funny, I'll tell you a little note about that talk. While I was giving that talk, there was a guy standing about 15 feet in front of me shaking his head no the whole time.
Wow.
Just to tell you the state of things as far as the maturity in some folks' level.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's just, he's standing there shaking his head no.
Yeah.
I just smiled and tried to look somewhere else.
Yeah.
But there weren't a lot of friendly faces.
Right.
I mean,
the moderator did the moderator, when they passed basically the protest against him, what is his thoughts on it? What was his response to that?
Well, he said, I have thick skin. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah.
So, but they really weren't protesting him.
Yeah.
They were protesting.
And the thing is, I mean, and audience, you need to go, and we're going to have the clip of Pastor Steve's talk in the show notes when this goes out. Click on it, find it, watch it. The thing is that like Knox is saying, I mean, what you were going over in the affirmations and denials in the overture that you're presenting is just Bible 101. Like, this is preschool. This is like ABC 1, 2, 3 on what the Bible teaches about sexuality. And how do we get to the point? How does the PCA get to the point where that can be protested as inappropriate language?
Right. Well, I guess I think what we're seeing here is the seeker-friendly model full grown.
Yeah.
They don't want to say anything that offends a sinner somewhere, and this particular movement doesn't want to say anything that would offend a homosexual sinner.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing it grow up to maturity, and we're failing to be prophetic.
Yeah.
You would think that old fights and old battles, especially one like the PCA. They left the PCUSA almost for this exact kind of infiltration that was
sexuality,
happening.
inerrance of scripture.
And you would think that the places they would be most sensitive at would be right at this topic. Are you at all concerned, like, guys, we've kind of been through this already? As you're looking at everything, why don't you think there's a sensitivity to this as, like, guys, this is what we left the PCUSA for?
Well, I'm baffled by it, honestly. I haven't been to the General Assembly in over a decade because we basically didn't think it was worth the time and money and effort until the Revoice thing came up and we said, this is just crazy, and we need to go and address it. So I think the culture has been won over by the homosexual propaganda, and a lot of pastors have been won over by the homosexual propaganda, and we want to expose this movement, the Revoice movement, and we want to correct it and hopefully stop it before it gets too far. So we wanted to try to nip it in the bud with this, but it wasn't encouraging, the response at the assembly.
Yeah.
How are they winning them? How are they winning over trained PCA pastors to the homosexual agenda? How are they winning them over? That doesn't seem like it's possible.
Well, I think once you embrace that seeker-friendly model, and you got to be friendly to the homosexuals too, you got to make them comfortable that you can't come into the church and feel like they're condemned for what they're doing, then this just follows naturally from it.
Yeah.
But we don't want to be prophetic. We don't want to tell people that that's a sin. And I think they're subtle too. They're not actually saying that you can practice homosexuality.
Right.
And they're not saying that you can lust as a homosexual, but that you can be oriented as a homosexual. And that there's problems with that whole usage right there. When I was studying this, I went and looked at Webster's dictionary, the 1828 Webster's dictionary, and I was looking for the term homosexual. And I was surprised to find it wasn't there. Now I looked at heterosexual. It wasn't there either. And I was like, where in the world did these terms come from?
Yeah.
I started researching it, and there was an Austro-Hungarian writer named Carl Maria Kurtbeny who invented the terms, and he was a homosexual activist who was fighting against sodomy laws.
Yeah.
And so he wanted to equalize homosexual with heterosexual.
Yeah.
And put them on the same level playing field. And then we've adopted those terms, and people think, well, this is just two different ways of directing your urges. They're both okay. One's not better than the other.
Yeah.
But the Bible says that one is unnatural. Homosexual attraction is unnatural in Romans 1.
Yeah.
It's against nature. And heterosexual attraction is natural.
Right.
But it can be sinful.
Right.
Or it could be lawful. And so when we've adopted those terms, heterosexual and homosexual, I think many pastors have adopted also the idea that this is sort of neutral and that you can be one or the other and you're okay as long as you don't act on it.
Yeah.
But that's not true. The attraction and the action are both sin.
Right.
So you made the statement just a minute ago that you hadn't been to GA assembly in the last 12 years or so, and I think a lot of conservative pastors in the PCA were home taking care of business, and that's why we're here where we're at with the leadership within the General Assembly. Is that a fair point?
I think that's fair. And another thing is there is a group called the National Partnership that I've just recently discovered.
Yep.
That has been working like a political agency within the denomination and trying to get their way in the General Assembly.
Whoa. Break that out. What you mean? What you talking about, Willis?
Deep state.
That sounds conspiratorial.
Yeah, I've heard about that group for years.
It's sort of secretive. It is a secretive type group, and they actually have running information on the floor with people who are hooked into the group and telling them how they should vote.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
I mean, they're actually working it out like that.
What's their name?
How they should vote. It's called the National Partnership.
National Partnership.
A group of folks tend to be more progressive.
Who's leading that?
I don't know the details of it. I've just read that's on the Aquila report as well. If you go on the Aquila report and look up National Partnership, they have more information about who's doing it.
Steve,
they have some evidence for it.
Steve, a few months ago, I don't remember exactly when it was, but I think maybe at the kind of the height of a lot of the Revoice buzz, Joey Pipa put out a video. I think is he still the president at Greenville Seminary?
I believe so. Yeah.
And in which he basically, he said, I was there at the beginning when PCA formed, and it was basically sort of like telling everybody to cool their baby jets. Everybody calm down a little bit. It's not as bad as it was then. Relax. Don't leave. It's not as bad as you think. And I was honestly, I was sort of surprised. I was shocked. I was disappointed. I thought, come on, Pipa. You're like Mr. Godfather of the conservative confessional PCA.
He can sniff out bad theology from miles away.
So, did you see that video? And I don't know, like, what's your take?
I didn't see the video. I did listen to a talk by Dr. Pipa, whom I love and respect greatly.
Yeah.
About the current General Assembly, and he's much more optimistic than I am about the state of things. And I don't know if he saw all that went down Thursday night, or if I don't think he was there on Friday when they did the protest. But I think he is much more patient maybe than we are. We're not sure what we're going to do right now.
Yeah.
With the situation, where we're going, if we're going to go, where we'll go, and we're debating whether or not it's worth the fight.
Yeah.
The time and effort spent in fighting for this, or should the time and effort be spent in ministering to folks here in town and our local ministry? And so it's hard. There are people who are leaving. Yeah. And they are bailing out, and there are people who are talking about forming another denomination too. That's in the works as well.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry.
No, I was just wondering, so Stephen, do you think that the Nashville statement is going to actually be a dam that holds this off at all? It doesn't sound like you feel like it's going to be strong enough to fight against what you see coming.
No, I don't think so. I'm glad we passed it. I voted for it.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's strong enough to stand. We're going to have to take a strong stand and really reveal to people the subtleties of this teaching. And it is subtle, especially if you've been living in this culture sort of imbibing of the propaganda. Well, they're not saying that you can continue to do it. They're saying you just can identify this way.
Right.
So our overture took issue with the identification.
Right.
Why we think it's not a matter of Christian liberty. They think it's a matter of Christian liberty to identify as a gay Christian.
Right.
And we're saying, no, this is a propagandistic move to make homosexuality normal and desensitize us to the evil.
Yeah. We have such short memories and such short memories. I did just a little Google search as I was thinking about all this, and the other mainline denominations, the first thing they did was make room for gay celibate Christians.
Yep.
That was the first thing all the mainline denominations have done, was say basically you can identify as gay, just don't practice it, and you're okay. And then that's the first step to normalizing it.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, it's okay. I guess you can practice it. I guess you can get married. I guess you can consecrate these sodomite marriages.
Yeah.
That's the move that's been run on us every single decade.
And
every single denomination.
You would think the PCA would know. They just came out of this.
And we're apparently saying the PCA is different.
Well, and here's the thing. Pastor Greg Johnson, after General Assembly, tweeted out saying, "Hey, we lost this battle, but we're gonna win the war."
Yeah.
And it seems like a lot of the conservatives with pastors within the PCA aren't even seeing that. They think that there's a war going on here.
Right.
Like, I've heard you, Pastor Stephen, I've heard you speak up. I've heard a couple pastors speak up. Kevin DeYoung had, I think, some decent statements about it.
But the disheartening thing is a lot of the conservative guys come out of it, say, we passed the Nashville statement.
Good.
Woo. No, that's over. We're safe.
Right.
What are some of your next steps in all this?
What's that?
Well, we have the study committee.
Right.
And this is an interesting thing. I voted against the study committee as well. I don't think we need to study this. I think this is clear. But,
Let's
seriously
read our Bible.
Yeah.
But the study committee is supposed to report back at the next General Assembly, which will be in Birmingham, which is a very conservative sort of spot in the denomination. And the ruling elders may turn out, and that might not be a good time to present that study committee report, especially since the Revoice folks, at least from Greg Johnson's tweet, thinks that it's going to be favorably disposed to them.
Right.
What he's saying. But what's interesting is the next General Assembly in the year after that is in St. Louis.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Interesting.
So if this politically, it would be interesting if they don't come back with a report next year. They postpone this and drag this out more,
right,
to get to the St. Louis Assembly, which will have more sympathetic people nearby that will come to the General Assembly. I'm not saying there's a conspiracy or anything.
Oh,
but,
yeah. You just have your eyes open.
He's just looking.
You're just seeing it how it is. One last thing real quick was I caught a short little, I think it was a Facebook Live video with Pastor Andy Webb, who's a PCA minister. He pointed out that he believes that the thing that needs to happen is that and there needs to be church discipline that's brought. He said there's national statement has no teeth. Even a study report has no teeth. Really, the teeth of a denomination is you discipline a pastor.
Right.
And he pointed out in the BCO, for the PCA, the Book of Church Order, that if a presbytery fails to discipline one of its own pastors, I think is it 2 or is it 3 other presbyteries can overture the General Assembly to take original jurisdiction of a case. Are you familiar with that?
I am, and that is, I think it's 2 presbyteries that overturn General Assembly.
Okay.
I'm not positive, but they can. I know it can be done.
Right.
And one of the things, I think Pastor Webb is right. One of the things that preserves the purity of the church is church discipline.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it is very difficult and painful and often ugly for ministers to be removed from their pulpits. And I think that's the only way the church can be preserved.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not done when necessary, then the church is going to be corrupted. I think there are other things that can be done as well. I thought about this, and I'm in dialogue and contact with. I met Greg Johnson after Friday. I met him for the first time Friday.
Yeah.
After the General Assembly when I was protested, and I was walking out, and I made an intent to try to talk to him about these things.
Yeah.
And so we are currently emailing back and forth. And my desire is that if he is honest, and I can't say that he's not yet, he may be honestly, I think he's mistaken. I think his teaching is not good. The whole Revoice thing is full of problems.
Yeah.
But I would love to see us be able to engage in some kind of debate about these things.
Yeah.
Public debate where we could get this. And I got this idea. I was reading Eusebius a long time ago.
Yeah.
And there's this wonderful passage where a man named Nepos he was a good guy. He was a martyr. He'd been faithful, but he had some really bad teaching in one area. And an elder named Dionysius set out to correct his followers. He was dead, but his followers were still teaching this error.
Mm-hmm.
And Dionysius went to correct the error graciously, and they met. And the description of it was intriguing. Would you let me read that to y'all?
Yeah, go for it.
Time for that?
Yeah.
Here's what Dionysius says. This is from Eusebius. He says, "After I had called all the presbyters and teachers of the brethren in the villages, I exhorted them to examine the doctrine publicly. When they produced this book by Nepos as a kind of armor and impregnable fortress, I sat with them for 3 days from morning till evening. 3 days, morning till evening, attempting to refute what it contained. Then also I was greatly pleased to observe the constancy, sincerity, and docility and intelligence of the brethren as we proceeded to advance in order, and the moderation of our questions and doubts, mutual concessions, and nor did we attempt to evade objections, nor were we ashamed if reason prevailed and we changed our opinions. To acknowledge the truth was right,
but
rather received with a good conscience and sincerity with single hearts before God. We received whatever was established by proofs and doctrines of the Scriptures." So if something like that could happen, and Greg Johnson is sincere but misled, I think that would be excellent if it was publicly done and these things could be ironed out that way.
Yeah.
But I do agree with Mr. Webb if that can't be done, and he persists and with these doctrines and others too with him, that church discipline is the only thing that can preserve us.
Yeah.
Well, I hope he's more honest with you than he was with us when we talked to him about whether or not he was gay.
Yeah.
So I have my doubts on how honest he's willing to be. But I'm praying that at least if something like that was to happen publicly, it might be very helpful.
Thank you so much, Pastor Stephen, for standing for the truth.
Amen.
At GA.
Amen.
Thank you for telling the truth. Thank you for loving your brother, our brother, Greg. And thanks for being on Cross Politic.
More Cross Politic when we come back.
Worship is not our idea of trying to please a benevolent being. Worship ultimately is something that God Himself demands of His creatures.
Join us this January as we will enjoy fellowship, spiritual growth, and the worship of God at the 2020 G3 Conference. For information and reservations, visit g3conference.com.
I appreciate Pastor Stephen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Y'all be praying for him.
Absolutely.
The whole PCA.
Amen.
All of us.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're in conservative, the reason why I care about what's going on in the PCA is because,
I grew up in that denomination.
Well, you grew up in it. My wife grew up in it.
Yeah.
And we're so close. We're drinking the same water, basically.
Yeah. Westminster Confession?
Oh, man. Seriously. Welcome back to Cross Politic on the Fight, Laugh, Feast Network. Man, what do you guys... I read this article in The Atlantic.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, I was curious. So remember we talked recently about the whole asking on the 2020 census whether you're a citizen or not.
Yeah.
Right.
And Supreme Court said basically something vague like
not a good enough argument.
Your intentions are not clear to us.
Yeah, not a good enough argument.
So we're not going to say no, but no.
Right.
Yeah,
Kinda.
right.
Yeah.
And even though the citizen question has been on the census back to 1820.
It's crazy.
Which is weird.
So the Atlantic article is written by a couple of so-called conservatives saying that Justice Roberts has basically effectively kind of slyly struck a blow to the administrative deep state.
But he actually voted against it.
Right. So Roberts joined all 4 liberal justices.
Right.
Like he keeps doing.
It seems to be a habit for him.
It's a bad habit for him. Upholding Obamacare, voting for Obergefell.
Maybe he's doing something we don't know.
No, did he vote against Obergefell?
This is I thought he voted for it, but maybe I'm wrong.
I'll have to check on that one.
Google.
It was Kennedy who voted for it. Maybe it wasn't Roberts.
I think Roberts is against it.
I think you're right. Okay, never mind. Sorry, Roberts. Take that back.
We're just so used to your voting record going that way.
We can't even remember when you sided with the conservatives. But what they said was, so for conservatives committed to the original understanding of the Constitution, there's been a lot of transfer of power over basically the last century.
Yeah.
From legislative authority in Congress to the administrative state. Okay, so the framers granted executive power solely to the president, legislative power solely to Congress, and judicial power solely to the courts.
Right.
Okay, and rather than allowing their combined exercise, I'm reading from the Atlantic Monthly story here, as in parliamentary systems, they worried, James Madison was worried in Federalist number 47 that all of these powers could be combined, and that would basically result in tyranny.
Right.
Which is what we've had happen, for example.
Checks and balances.
Yeah. So the checks and balances with the idea of separate the powers. Yeah. Only Congress can legislate.
Right.
Courts can, the judicial system, the judicial courts can only rule, is it constitutional or not?
Yep.
President is executive. Now, beginning with Woodrow Wilson, progressive thinkers have viewed the separation of powers as obsolete.
Because Woodrow was a socialist.
And ineffective for a modern industrial society.
Oh, that's what happened.
Okay. So they urged instead that Congress delegate its powers to experts.
Mm-hmm. This sounds familiar.
Expert agencies, which could issue regulations without having to survive both houses of Congress and the president. So the agencies would become perpetual motion machines of progressive lawmaking.
Yep.
So the article in The Atlantic basically argues, though, that this decision, combined with 2 other decisions that were not really directly related, have struck a blow against these non-elected agencies, administrative agencies. Because what they said in this particular case with Roberts joining the liberals was that basically this decision by the Census Bureau,
right,
which is an administrative policy.
Something we've been doing for years.
Yeah, but not elected.
Right.
So in previous decisions, the old precedent was basically whatever the administrative group came up with, they just sort of assumed the best. Supreme Court decisions have assumed the best. They're just carrying out law.
Fit within the bandwidth of the law.
Yeah, if it fits within bandwidth of the law, then we don't question intentions.
Yeah, right.
But what they're arguing in this Atlantic story is that Roberts is sort of being sneaky, joining the liberal justices by taking by saying, because your intentions were not clear in why you were wanting to put the citizenship question on the census, it's not good enough. Meaning, implying that in order for you to do what you want to do, it has to be clearly found in legislative
some
law.
sort of law that says that you can do this.
And I actually agree with that concern.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. We should want lawmakers to be held responsible for what they do.
Right.
Yeah,
but as it is,
and not passing the buck to the bureaus.
As it is, so much of what's happening is happening with bureaucrats who are unelected.
Right.
So you vote in and out representatives and senators.
Yeah, but the bureaucrats
and nothing changes because the bureaucrats are sitting fat and happy in their office.
So you remember when we had Russ Fulcher on? He said all the bureaucrats have to do is wait 2 years or
and
4 years for a new election, and I'm out of here.
So when you start blaming administrations, you're really actually dealing with the bureaucrats that are in there still.
Right. So, anyways, my point bringing it up is it's an interesting take, but I think these conservatives who are writing this article in the Atlantic are, I think they've got naive high hopes.
So you disagree both with what Roberts did?
Yeah, I think the administrative bureaucracy needs to get taken down.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think he should have sided with Trump and in some measure tried to strike a blow at it.
That's what
I think he needed to try to do both if it was possible.
Sure.
Yeah.
But here, just think about it. So what they're saying that with this decision and several other decisions that they name, a new precedent is developing in which the Supreme Court does not respect the actions of non-elected officials unless they can show clearly that their intent is to fulfill a law that has been passed by Congress.
Yeah, that's good.
And so Roberts' argument was there's not a clear law passed by Congress that demands or insists that the citizenship question be asked. Even if that's what they've done in the past, it's not clear enough.
Yeah. So that's why they should have never passed a Obergefell. Right? There's no clear law. There actually was a law.
Let me make sure I'm
defining.
I want to make sure I'm tracking with you.
Yes.
Okay.
So you're saying that they're saying that what Roberts is doing is forcing the Congress to actually make a law one way or the other so that he can rule on it and it's written down and then we don't have to deal with this anymore.
Now, yes. And I think in principle, that's good.
That makes sense.
But the problem is that progressives don't care about the law.
They aren't going to play within that
Progressives will... They play you. Let me give you an example of this. Okay. This week, Matt Truella, we've had him on the show before, Pastor Matt. He posts this great meme. It's just like it's awful.
It's a great awful meme.
It's a great awful meme. In 2013, in United States versus Windsor, SCOTUS, Supreme Court, ruled that the definition of marriage had to remain in the hands of the states.
Yeah.
2013.
In 2013, the Supreme Court ruled that the definition of marriage had to remain in the hands of the states.
Yeah.
Ginsburg, Sotomayor, Kennedy, Breyer, and Kagan, all five of those Supreme Court justices ruled to uphold the states' rights to define what marriage is. And they struck down Part 3 of the DOMA Act. Remember the Defense of Marriage Act that Bill Clinton signed?
Yeah, he's gone now. Epstein got him gone.
That defined marriage as one man and one woman. And in Part 3, it said that the federal funds couldn't go in any way to same-sex unions.
Yeah, right.
The Supreme Court struck that down for a couple in New York, and New York recognized same-sex unions.
Right.
And so it, in defense of New York,
which is supporting same-sex,
said that the state had the right to define marriage however they wanted to.
Yep. So same-sex couples could get access to federal money
in New York.
Okay, let me. I'm on a track.
Yep. Are you with me?
Yeah, I'm making sure.
Okay.
The Supreme Court sides with New York, who is in support of same-sex marriage.
That's right.
They give them the argument of states' rights to do that.
State rights,
and that's
according to the Constitution.
The federal DOMA was wrong in Section 3 because of that.
Right, but it was specifically in the right of states to define marriage.
That's right.
And again, listen carefully. Those 5 justices voted for that.
Okay.
Yep.
2 years later.
2015 now.
2 years later, in Obergefell versus Hodges, the same 5 justices, not Roberts, voted to mandate sodomite marriage in all 50 states.
We might need a lot more of this.
So they federally mandated now.
Justices says it doesn't matter that a majority of the states have defined marriage as between one man and one woman.
Yep.
It overturned state constitutions.
Yep.
A majority of the state constitution and mandated sodomite marriage.
It didn't overturn it. The state constitution just allowed it to overturn it.
Well, the state.
Right? It's an opinion. Like the Supreme Court, it's an opinion.
Yes.
But the states allow it.
Yes.
So who's going to supreme the Supreme Court?
Right. So my point. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Jesus.
Like, I mean, seriously.
Jesus is going to.
Within 2 years, they contradict. The Supreme Court contradicts themselves.
And so this is my answer to the writers of the Atlantic article, which is the progressives don't care about precedent. And this is a problem that conservatives have over and over again. We think that the progressives will play by the rules.
Yeah, right.
And over and over again, they say, okay, this is good enough. We'll take that. And we're saying, good.
Yep.
And then 2 years later, they're like, and now more.
Yep.
Because the progressive, the standard of progressivism, there's no standard of progressivism.
Yeah, this is exactly.
It's I want to do whatever the hell I want to do.
That's right. And this is what PCA people should be very concerned about. Revoice.
Exactly.
Because it doesn't matter what you passed in Nashville.
Yeah.
It is not enough to kill what you got brewing up.
That's exactly right. And
that's why Greg Johnson knows, hey, this is we lost this battle. That's cool.
We're going to win the war.
We're going to win the war.
Because progressives are not going to play by those rules.
And this is hard, especially in the church. It's so hard. I mean, it's a little bit easier when you're talking about straight up pagans.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so hard to look across the aisle and see somebody who professes the name of Christ, who's baptized, who's, is in your church, in your communion. It's so hard to say, you, brother, are taking us somewhere awful.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, that's I would say to Greg. I might say to Pastor Greg Johnson. Like, I mean, we tried to tell him that. We said that.
We told him not to do the conference. Repent.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that they're at home like laughing maniacally, like blah, blah, blah. No, they're deceived. They're deeply deceived. They believe their own lies. But that's the reason why good men in conservative denominations have to see this play.
That's right.
That once progressivism gets a hook, there are no breaks.
Right.
There are no breaks. And by the grace of God, God doesn't let us get as evil as we might logically become.
Yeah. Right.
Well, he doesn't.
I think
breaks there.
One of the words that's been forgotten in all this conversation is mortification. When you see something like this, you don't just play around with it. You take every amount of energy you can to completely kill it. With something like Revoice, with something like right now with Roberts, when he sees something like this, like you said, he should have did both ways. He should have ran the flag, the pole, ran right up the flagpole with this one and said, nope, this is the flag we're flying. Right. We're not going to do this. If you want to challenge this, what you need to do is go make a law then.
Right.
And then he still gets what he wants both ways, but you can't play the soft game with this. No, you'll lose every time.
You do. And you just cannot trust that promise. Like, okay, I'm going to buy, this is precedent. Now we're going to abide by the Nashville statement.
Like that goes right along to the story that you found. I'm trying to find it right now.
The Nashville statement doesn't have any teeth.
No.
They're going to come back with a study committee and it's going to be even softer. I'd love to be wrong about that.
What was it? The Christians that got kicked out of schools for the voucher program?
Yeah.
That you were pointing to?
Yeah. So some Christian schools in Maryland.
It's Bethel Christian Academy.
We're participating in the voucher program.
I'm pretty sure I played Bethel in high school, by the way.
Did you really?
Oh, yeah. I went to high school in Maryland.
So they were participating in the voucher program, and I think the courts just ruled in Maryland that they couldn't have participate in the voucher program anymore because they believed in traditional marriage.
Now, the courts ordered them to pay back $100,000.
Wow.
$100,000. And the article says, the leadership of Bethel Christian Academy was stunned. After all, it had relied on that money to serve the school's 280 low-income kids. For 2 years, those vouchers were what made their option to public school possible.
Well, but they should have been stunned that we actually thought they were going to play by the rules.
Yeah.
But this was connected actually to the Obergefell decision.
Yeah.
The very rules for the voucher program, to get them inside the voucher program, to get people to get their money to schools they want to, are saying now we're going to control what schools you can give that money to.
Yeah.
During the oral arguments for Obergefell in 2015, this exact question was asked for Christian education.
Yep.
When asked if religious schools could be punished for holding a natural view of marriage.
Natural. Did you hear that? Natural?
Yeah.
Imagine that.
U.S. Solicitor Donald Verrilli was surprisingly honest. Quote, said, "It's certainly going to be an issue. I don't deny that, Justice Alito. It's going to be an issue."
Wow.
And now the leadership of Bethel Christian Academy is stunned.
Surprised.
And so
they've been told that they cannot any longer participate in the voucher program because of their biblical beliefs on marriage and sexuality.
So then what is the opposite way? We shouldn't have been pushing for the voucher program.
No.
That was just
no.
There's
well,
no way.
I don't mind a voucher program maybe as a short-term
tactic.
But
I think you're going to have to pay the money back anyway.
Well, yeah.
It's not a short-term.
Most likely. Well, that's the thing, and you're right. So the point is that yes, when they say we don't care what you do with our money, it's like Epstein.
Yeah, exactly.
Here, just have some money.
Just have some money. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Here's your 22,000, Chuck Schumacher.
But you take the king's coin, you become the king's man.
Right.
We talked about in the beginning of the Cross Politic, building the platform, supporting Cross Politic.
Yeah.
It's so essential that we understand we need our own platforms that are separate from the government.
Yeah.
Give us our plot of land and let us build on it.
And this is why your Christian schools,
Christian education matters. Come on now.
do not take the coin.
Don't do it.
Right. Don't take the coin. Now, I mean, I know it's a messy world, and I'm not saying it's it's a sin in every situation, but what I'm saying is that it's a bad tactic. It's long term. It's a mistake, and this is because here. Bottom line, last thing, is that the world functions. Jesus said that the great ones of the earth exercise their authority basically by lording it, by power politics.
Yep.
Everybody in the world functions by power politics, which is manipulative and it guilt trips.
Mm-hmm.
And it says basically, if you don't bring up my stuff, I won't bring up yours.
Yeah.
And so there's fear and guilt and shame.
Oh, man.
And if you don't think this happens in the church, you're not paying attention.
Oh my goodness.
Because people say, I don't want to bring up something because they might bring something up on me.
Yeah.
I don't want to be confrontational with this brother, this elder, this person in the church. I don't want to call them on their sin because they might do something on me.
That's not the gospel.
That is not the gospel. He says, it shall not be so among you.
Right.
But the greatest among you will be the servant of all. Yeah. And the only way you can be the servant of all, that doesn't mean you're pacifistic. It doesn't mean you're apathetic. It doesn't mean you're a wet noodle.
Yeah.
It means that you're a servant of God.
Yeah.
That's right.
It means that your sins are forgiven. You are washed clean. When you repent of your sins, when you confess your sins and you're clean, no one's got anything on you.
Yeah.
That's right.
And that's the freedom that the gospel offers. And now all you're doing is you're just out there.
Well,
honest, clear, free.
You're dangerous because you actually have no hooks in you.
What you got on me? Exactly. No hooks.
Yeah. Well,
no
but
hooks.
also for far too long, I think the good guys have not been fighting, have not been engaging. This is what basically
That's
Stephen
because
said.
They haven't believed the gospel.
Well,
or they're sitting
allow
home
people-
and they're taking care of one thing while letting another thing weeds grow over here.
Well, that's the thing is when you don't believe in power politics. The thing is,
temptation is
you know that home
to not think it's gonna be a problem.
and local community is the most important thing.
Yeah, that's right.
And it is.
Yeah, it is.
And the thing is that shepherds nevertheless need to recognize that the wolves are coming.
Yeah.
You can't just say, well, they're being good at the General Assembly. They're being good at Presbyterian. I know them.
Those are good guys.
I went to seminary with them.
You got to be fighting on the ground and you got to be fighting in the air.
You have to have, Pastor Doug Wilson likes to say, you have to have a sunny cynicism. Sunny cynicism. Like cheerful, cheerful, and kind and gracious, and at the same time,
that's right.
Be a little bit squinty eyed.
That's right.
Like, what play you running?
Right.
Where's that money coming from?
Yeah. Well, because it's not like the Bible said that false teachers will rise up from among you. It's not like that actually said that in the Bible.
Oh no! Jesus said that.
Oh, he said that. Oh, okay.
He said that they're going to be dressed up like sheep. Even they're going to get the ordinations and classical Christian school
wear fancy collars
and go to all of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
If you're single, get married. If you're married, have kids. And if you have kids, go baptize them. Until next week, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politic.